Hey friends, and welcome back. It's Jason, and today I'm going to be talking about a few tips that I have for helping you shoot better photos in the wintertime. And today I'm in the forest. I'm in Irishtown Nature Park in Moncton, and the first tip that I have for you is worry about yourself. Now what I mean by that is your own gear, your mittens, and I prefer mittens over gloves because I can keep my fingers together, but I wish that I could get my finger out to press the shutter button on my camera, but sometimes it's just a matter of pulling your hand out and putting your mitten back on. So it works for me. I wouldn't necessarily do that if it was extremely cold out. I may have some different gloves on, but these work for me. Another thing is dress in layers. So sometimes it's not that cold out today, but I will put a base layer on under my pants. Today I just have jeans on. Sometimes I will put the base layer below jeans. Sometimes I will have water repellent pants on. Just, it depends on where I'm going, what I'm doing, and where I'm shooting, and the weather that's happening at the time. Another thing, speaking of water repellent, is have a jacket that repels a little bit of liquid. This Columbia jacket that I have on, it will keep out a good portion of anything that's falling out of the sky. If I happen to fall in the snow, I won't get wet, I won't get cold. Speaking of wet and cold, keep your feet warm and dry. And I got some nice Wind River shoes on, and these have really good grip. As you can see where I am, that comes in handy. Even on groomed trails can get really icy because things melt and freeze and melt and freeze. So good grips are good to have. These are waterproof and they're warm. I got good warm socks on inside, so there's nothing worse being out shooting and having wet, cold feet. Can't be worse. Have a hat on, keep your head warm, because you know how much heat we lose through your head, and you know what, I don't have much insulation up there, so I keep my head warm. So those are the main things when it comes to tip number one, is worry about yourself, keep your gear warm and dry, and the gear I mean is you. So that's number one. Let's get on to number two. Tip number two is worry about your batteries. You know that cold affects batteries, and being out in an environment like this, your batteries are going to die faster. So one thing I like to do to keep them warm is I will put an extra battery on an inside pocket of my jacket, keep it close to my body so that the body heat that is trapped inside your jacket keeps your battery warm. This will help you especially when you're doing video, because video eats batteries a lot faster than taking photos. So one thing you should do is definitely try and keep your batteries warm if you can. Keep them next to your body, and that's tip number two. Let's move on to tip number three. Tip number three is when you're in a situation like this where you have so much snow, you have so much white, what's going to happen is your camera is pre-programmed to not have too much white or not have too much black. What happens is your camera tries to bring everything to the middle, or medium gray, or middle gray as some will call it. It's 18% gray. So you'll see some people setting their white balance with what's called a gray card. Well, your camera is going to see this situation here and you're going to, it's going to think, oh, there's so much white, I got to bring this back to the middle. So what is going to happen is it's going to create a scene that your snow is going to look kind of gray. It's going to look kind of bland. Everything's going to take on that gray tone. So what you can do is you can overexpose by a couple of stops. If you have exposure compensation on your camera, you can move it to lighten the scene somewhat so that you bring back some of that white. Now, if you're shooting in RAW, which you should be, you're going to have it so that the scene is almost where you want it, and in a lot of cases you can pull it back to gray, from the gray to the white. And if this shot that I've lined up here turns out, well, here's the shot. Tip number 4 is use your histogram on days like today to your advantage. So one thing you'll notice, I've got my histogram up on my screen here, and as I adjust the settings on the camera, you will see the histogram move. Now, to get your white the way you want it, you want to bring this as close to that right-hand side as you can without it touching. Because if, for example, I go too far and it touches, now things are starting to get overexposed. So it doesn't matter if a little bit touches, but you want to bring it as far to the right as you can. And you can adjust it later once you get back on your computer in Photoshop, and you can adjust it. But with this, you have to be really careful. And with your exposure compensation on as well, you have to be very careful because you can overexpose things. But you'll notice that if I move it to the middle, things start to get way too contrasty, way too dark. So you want to pull this as far as you can to the right. Use your histogram along with thinking about middle gray and medium gray and your exposure compensation, and balance things out so that you get things as close to the way you want it in camera, so that when you get back on the computer, you have less work to do. Tip number 6 is basically one word: experiment. Use things like your white balance to change the scene a little bit. Like, for example, the trailway behind me with all the trees lined up, maybe I want to make that a little bit more foreboding and ominous and a little bit more towards the blue. A lot of times I will leave my white balance on auto, but sometimes I will tune it to daylight or flash or cloudy day, just to change it a little bit, just to see. Now, of course, you can do all of these things. If you're shooting raw, you can do them in Photoshop afterwards. Sometimes if it's cold out, I don't want to fiddle with the camera too much, and I'll just do it later. Sometimes I want a specific scene, so experiment a little bit and get the picture you want. Because like for example, a sunrise on the snow, that nice golden glow, that's the scene that you're looking for. And a sunset, same thing. So experiment a little bit with your colors, your white balance, and get the picture that you want. Let's move on to number 8. Tip number 8 that I have for you today is try using a polarizer. I use a circular polarizer from a company called Earth. That's URTH. There's a link, an affiliate link down below if you want to check them out. And if you pick something up, that helps me out. But using a polarizer with all of this white snow can really help reduce glare. Now, you have to factor in the fact that it may reduce the amount of light that is coming into your lens, so take that into consideration. But especially on bright sunny days. Now today we don't have to worry about that, it's a cloudy day, but on bright sunny days, try using a polarizer, because you can just imagine the amount of light that is reflected off of all of this snow. So a polarizer can help cut that out and bring back some of the blue in the sky, some of the clouds, and make your picture look a lot better. So try out a polarizer, and again, like I said, I use an Earth polarizer, and there is a link down below. Stick around, there's a bonus tip. So the bonus tip that I have for you today is what I like to call camera acclimation. So basically what happens is some people will take their camera when they're out in the cold like this, and they'll put it in a Ziploc bag and they'll leave it in there when they take it home. I don't bother with that. They do that to prevent condensation. What I do is I will put my camera, when I get back to my car, I will put my camera in my camera bag, and the temperature difference between outside and inside will be just a little bit of an adjustment. So there will be an adjustment there. And then when I get home, I won't immediately take my camera out of my camera bag. I will let my camera and the temperature gradually change within my camera bag, so that my camera has a chance to acclimate to the temperature change and there won't be any condensation forming on my camera. And don't take your card directly out of your camera immediately when you go from cold to hot to start looking at your pictures, or you may get some condensation on the inside of your camera. I've never had that happen, knock on wood, But just to prevent that, leave your camera in your camera bag for a little while. I use a Peak Design camera bag. It's kind of weather sealed. The temperature will stay cool in it for a little bit, and it will gradually get back to the temperature that is in my house when I get home. And then I'll look at my pictures and go from there. So I hope that all of these tips help you out when you go out and take some pictures. And that's what I'm telling you to do. Get out there, take some pictures, have some fun, experiment with shooting in the winter. It can be a lot of fun. Different times of day, different weather. It can be a lot of fun to get out here in the winter and take some great photos. So I hope you had fun today. If you did, please hit like down below and take advantage of some of these tips. Hit subscribe, come back for more, and I'll see you again next time.